The Pocket Dogs Go on Holiday. Written by Margaret Wilde. Illustrated by Stephen Michael King. One morning, Mr. Pockets and his two very small dogs, Biff and Buff, went for a holiday by the sea. Biff and Buff explored the caravan inside and out, up and down, until Mr. Pockets called, "Please help unpack the bags." Biff took out his blue rubber bone, his squishy ball, and his comfy cushion. Buff took out his green rubber bone, his chewy ball, and his cuddly rag. Mr. Pockets collected his fishing rod, bucket and spade. Then he put Biff in the right pocket of his very big coat, and Buff in the left pocket. "Are you ready?" he asked, as he always did. "Are you happy?" "Ruff, ruff," said Biff and Buff, which meant, "Yes, thank you, Mr. Pockets." As they walked to the beach, everyone said, "Hello, Mr. Pockets. What big pockets you have, Mr. Pockets." "Hello, little pocket dogs. Hello, Biff. Hello, Buff." Biff and Buff said hello most happily. They loved being Mr. Pocket's pocket dogs. While Buff chased the waves and Biff ran away from the waves, Mr. Pockets took off his coat, rolled up his sleeves and started building a kennel castle. Biff and Buff played "We're the kings of the kennel castle" until Mr. Pockets said, "Right, it's time to catch some fish for our tea." So they walked further along the beach to the rocks. Mr. Pockets caught 3 fish, one for each of them. Biff and Buff were most impressed. "Home time," said Mr. Pockets. So they went back down the beach to collect Mr. Pockets' coat. But while they'd been on the rocks, the tide had come in. The kennel castle was gone, and so was Mr. Pockets' very big coat. "It's washed away to sea," said Mr. Pockets sadly. "Rough," said Biff and Buff. That evening, Mr. Pockets cooked the fish, but no one was hungry. And in the night, Biff and Buff had bad dreams about Mr. Pocket's very big coat. Biff dreamed mermaids played dress-ups with it. Buff dreamed crabs made it their home. Biff dreamed a shark ate it. Buff dreamed a whale swallowed it. They woke up feeling cold and miserable. Mr. Pockets gave them both a cuddle. "Cheer up," he said. "We'll go to the shops right now, and I'll buy a new coat." At the shops, Mr. Pockets tried on every single coat. Brown, green, blue, plain, striped, checked, black, yellow, red, belted, buckled, buttoned. But none of them had pockets big enough for 2 small pocket dogs. "Rough," said Biff and Buff. Mr. Pockets and Biff and Buff trudged silently back to the caravan. And of course nobody said, "What big pockets you have, Mr. Pockets." Nobody said, "Hello, little pocket dogs." "I'm going to lie down," said Mr. Pockets, and he went into the caravan and shut the door. "Poor Mr. Pockets," said Biff. "And poor us," said Buff. "We'll never be pocket dogs again." They were quiet for a moment, listening to the roar of the sea. Biff sat up. "If the sea can take away the coat, maybe it can bring it back too." Buff sat up. "We'll go and look for it," he said. The 2 little dogs ran quickly to the beach and started looking. They saw people, umbrellas, towels and picnic baskets, but no coat. They saw 2 crabs, 1 pelican and a lot of seagulls, but no coat. They saw seaweed, jellyfish and shells, but no coat. They saw driftwood, and behind the driftwood was a sodden bundle. Mr. Pocket's very big coat. "We'll drag it home," said Buff. "Mr. Pockets will get such a surprise," said Biff. So they each took hold of a sleeve. They tugged and pulled, pulled and tugged, but the coat was too heavy to move. "Rough," said Biff and Buff. "There you are," said Mr. Pockets. "I've been looking everywhere for you. And you found my coat, you clever dogs." "Ruff, ruff," said Biff and Buff, which meant, "We're glad you're glad, Mr. Pockets." Mr. Pockets took the coat home and hung it up to dry. Then he put it on. It smelled of sea and sand and sunshine. Mr. Pockets put Biff in the right pocket and Buff in the left pocket. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Are you happy?" "Ruff, ruff, ruff, ruff," said Biff and Buff, which meant, "We love you, Mr. Pockets." And we love being your pocket dogs once again.
Now that you have read The Pocket Dogs Go on Holiday, use these suggested questions or discussion points with your child. You may like to pause the recording after each question to allow you some time to share a response together. Where did the Pocket Dogs have their holiday? Mr. Pockets left his coat on the beach. What happened to it? How did that happen? That night, what did Biff and Buff do? The next day, what did Mr. Pockets do? Where did Biff and Buff go? Where was the coat? Look back through the book and look at the pictures. Have a think and talk about the different feelings that Biff, Buff and Mr. Pockets might have had during the story.